Now this is recording. RTI
International
Center for
Forensic
Science
presents
Just Science.
Welcome to Just Science, a podcast for justice professionals and anyone interested in learning more about forensic science, innovative technology, current research, and actionable strategies to improve the criminal justice system. In Episode 7, Just Science interviews Dr. Catalin Grigoras and Cole Whitecotton from the National Center for Media Forensics about deepfakes. Deepfakes are a form of synthetic media that replaces an existing image with someone else's likeness. While relatively new, deepfake technology has grown in sophistication over the last few years. In some cases, the synthetic image is almost indiscernible from the person that it is imitating. Dr. Catalin Grigoras and Cole Whitecotton are working to understand and combat deepfakes. Listen along as they discuss the capability implications and the future of deepfake technology in this episode of Just Science. This season is funded by the National Institute of Justice's Forensic Technology Center of Excellence. Here is your host, Dr. Mike Planty.
Hello, and welcome to Just Science. I'm your host, Dr. Mike Planty, with NIJ's Forensic Technology Center of Excellence, a program of the National Institute of Justice. Here to help us with the discussion today are two guests from the National Center for Media Forensics, based out of the University of Colorado, Denver. Dr. Catalin Grigoras and Mr. Cole Whitecotton. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Grigoras serves as director for the National Center of Media Forensics. He coordinates the center's activity, including education and scientific projects. His research encompasses digital signal processing and forensic multimedia, including digital recording, authentication, audio-image analysis, and enhancement. He is a member of the Audio Engineering Society, American Academy of Forensic Sciences, Digital Media, Multimedia Section, and the Scientific Working Group on Digital Evidence. He has numerous articles on forensic audio, video issues, and technology. Cole Whitecotton is an IT professional at the center. Cole helps develop and maintain the equipment and software used throughout the center's education and research programs, both online and in the classroom. He has contributed to multiple research projects, including DARPA Run Metaphor program. Today's discussion is on deepfakes. So let's start with you first, Cole. We all have some familiarity with, basic photoshopping. My son, for my last couple of birthdays, has put my head on various animals and sent me a nice card. What type of manipulation are we talking about when we talk about deepfakes?
Sure. So unlike the sort of Photoshop that you're talking about there, deepfakes is really an AI-generated process. Deepfakes is a portmanteau, essentially, of deep learning and fakes. That's kind of where the term comes from. And it can be a lot of different things. I think we're probably most familiar with the video side of it. I think it was sometime in 2017 that this seemed to kind of just blow up and explode out of nowhere. A person on Reddit, actually, with the username Deepfakes, posted this tool and some videos of this. But essentially, it's using deep neural network, deep learned models to put a face onto someone else's face. And that's the kind of more common way that we see it and what we're a little more used to in the media and stuff like that. But I mean, it's any sort of now, it's kind of become a catch-all term for any sort of AI-generated manipulations or media, including deep voice, which is doing the similar thing but with audio, with kind of mimicking and modeling people's voices and generating voice that way. There's also like music and composing. You see a lot of stuff. I think this song was composed in the style of Bach or Beethoven, but it's all computer generated, and it's all just taking all of that stuff through a neural network, through some sort of AI modeling, and then producing something out the other end. But I think something I actually just learned about not too long ago was this is also being used in the financial world. Apparently, there's a lot of automated tools and a lot of AI used to detect falsifications in financial records and things like that, and that there are actually models being used to combat that detection by generating what looks like human-made journal entries and stuff like that. And I think that goes along in with, that's kind of the number side of the language side of stuff too. There's also generated text. OpenAI is a kind of big organization company that is working really hard on generating text, generating articles, generating volumes of that sort of stuff too. So deepfakes in itself, though, kind of encompasses everything. It's like I said, it's kind of a catch-all term for all of that stuff. But what we mostly know of, and when we think of deepfakes, is the video side of stuff. Putting, Barack Obama's face on the comedian's, kind of puppeteering his person, his face.
And so it has, like you said, a lot of very positive in the movie making world and in other commercial entertainment type of businesses. It's very positive. But for every positive attribute, it's taking on a negative form. So why is the area of deepfake so important? What are the implications and harms that could come from it?
Sure. Well, I think there's some obvious implications and things that we've already seen. We've obviously seen people posting things without other people's consents, using actors and people that are in the public to make it look like they're doing something that they're not doing. So that's an obvious implication. And I think that's probably the biggest one that we've sort of dealt with kind of and actually seen in the public. But, that just goes along with misinformation as well. In my opinion, I think probably the biggest threat, it's a little less of a threat. I think deepfakes are less of a threat to us in the US. I mean, and sort of, I don't want to say necessarily, but the Western kind of culture, I think the biggest threat in these actually comes from misinformation in foreign ways. Either kind of governments causing and creating misinformation for their own people, but then also for the rest of the world. So, an example of that would be something like, I think it's Kim Jong-il was famously known for having shot 11 holes in one in the first time he's ever played golf and stuff like that. And imagine in that country, if they all of a sudden had video of a golfer getting a hole in one and they could put Kim Jong-il's face on it in a much more kind of believable way, then that could become a piece of information that kind of adds to that sort of stuff. So I think in the foreign kind of misinformation way, I think that's the most damaging aspect, in my opinion.
So Cole, you mentioned AI being a big component with deepfakes. Could you say a little bit for our listeners around what AI is?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, AI just stands for artificial intelligence. The idea behind it is that there's a lot of, in movies and stuff, you see robots and that sort of thing, that you put a little consciousness inside of a computer or something like that becomes an artificial intelligence. There's a lot of, that's a huge field, a huge world. There's a lot of different ways that AI is kind of measured and determined whether or not it really is artificially intelligent. In terms as far as deepfakes, though, what it is it's what they call neural networks. It's essentially the way that links are made between one thing and another thing. So I think a really common one that people start off with is sorting networks. So if I give a computer a whole bunch of pictures of dogs, I train that computer to know what dogs look like. I then dump a whole bunch of random pictures into it. I want that computer to be able to tell me all of these pictures that are dogs and all these pictures that are not dogs. There's a lot of complications. There's a lot of things involved with that. Not all dogs are black, not all dogs are brown, not all dogs are big, not all dogs are little, that sort of stuff. So it takes a lot of work and a lot of training to train that network to understand and be able to reliably recognize what a dog is. In the world of deepfakes, you're essentially doing a similar thing. You're giving it a face and you're saying, hey, I want you to build a model that is of this face. I want you to know the points where the eyes are, the color of the eyes, the color of the skin, the color of where freckles are, where the mouth is, how the mouth moves, how the teeth is, a whole bunch of parameters there. I want you to understand this person. I want you to understand this model as deeply as you possibly can, because I'm going to give you another face, and I want you to build that face on top of that other model. And that's essentially how the deepfake works. In the deepfake world, there's a couple different ways of doing it. Some of them are what they're called generative neural networks. Some of them are adversarial neural networks. In the adversarial world, you're essentially pitting two separate AIs against each other. One of them is generating a face, and the other one is telling the other one whether it's good or not. And by putting them against each other, it's sort of like a teacher-student relationship is what it is. The teacher is telling the one that's generating it, yes, this is good, or no, it's bad. Make it again, do it again, over and over and over, and doing it millions and millions and millions of times, over and over and over every second. The other way, the generative, is essentially you're creating it, they're called encoders and autoencoders. that's more along the lines of what I was saying earlier. I want you to learn this model. I want you to learn this face as well as you can, because when I give you this other face, I'm going to have you build this face on top of that face. And so that's the most common way and the easier way for the deepfakes to work. And that's how you get stuff like, the comedian Jordan Peele impersonating Barack Obama with Barack Obama's face on top of it. It's a mixture of a lot of stuff. They had to do a lot of post-processing for it, but that's how you get that sort of stuff. I'm putting that face on top of this other face, and then it's like a puppet. Then you're literally moving your face, and whatever your face is doing, it's making that other face. It's generating a face on top of your face.
So, Professor Grigoras, what's the scope of crimes? We heard a few from Cole, but where are these cases that you're handling or dealing with, or law enforcement dealing with, involving deepfakes?
I would like to start, first of all, with a brief description of the big picture. Deepfakes, if we speak about the face manipulation, are just one category of video manipulation. And I mean much more techniques like to remove people, to add people in a video, to remove or add objects. And the face is just one part from the pixels point of view now of the entire image. So when we speak about deep fakes, we usually speak about a few other techniques like green screen removal, which is a very common technique, and the technology is for free, available on internet to play with this kind of green and blue screen removals. And you can remove the background with a still image or with a video, with whatever you want. Everything is up to the imagination. And of course, if we come back to government, by the test that is provided to the people that are hired to manipulate audios and videos. As we already noticed, not only in US, but all over the world, yes, we can start speaking about smart fake news. You are all familiar with fake news. It's nothing new from this point of view, but we can start speaking about smart fake news. News that embed audio or video that are inconsistent with originals, that they are manipulated, and also with text, with a nice story. Sometimes the story is based on a truth. So from the entire story, half of it is probably the truth. And on top of it is very easy to start building a virtual reality. Virtual reality, not from a pixels or mathematical point of view, but from a logical or philosophical one, a parallel world. And we start speaking about governments that are not friendly, of course. As Cole mentioned, governments against people, governments against governments, people that break the copyrights and they use for fun, as they claim, the different faces of politicians, actors, is a longer list. And sincerely speaking, I started with Cole and with other colleagues to build a kind of syllabus of these kind of techniques, and also a kind of list with real case scenarios. And both of them are open lists. I can tell you by now that we cannot speak about a final list. No, it's open.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so one of the challenges really about this is that whole blending, right? It's just not, this is complete counterfeit, right? This is not a completely made up. It's a blending of the real with the virtual, with the made up. And that's really, so when you have a video, 90% of it may be true, may be real, but it's the 10% that's been manipulated, enhanced, edited. That's the real challenge, right? Is to find that part of the video or the audio or any multimedia, as you said, any digital product that's been manipulated. And it's the same thing with the counterfeit, right? So when you make a counterfeit, you'll take a receipt or a transaction and you won't modify the whole thing. It'll only change 500 to 5,000 or something like that, right? And so that's the real problem solving that examiners like yourselves are really faced with.
Exactly. And when we face these kind of new challenges and we have to explain them to the people and to do it on a common language, is recommended to come with other forensic science examples, like a banknote. And I follow exactly the logic that from your example. Supposing that somebody has the ink, the paper, and all the know-how to build a banknote. But in the end, there is a huge challenge when it is about the serial number. So from all these security features, one of them is enough to be found inconsistent with an original. Then the logic is quite simple. The banknote is not original. So we do the same in our field. We are looking for different types of image manipulation, for green screen, for recompression, because recompression and resizing of an image are well-known techniques that are used by different people to mask the local traces of manipulation. We look for deep faces, deep fakes. We are looking for deep voices as well. We look for traces of edits like inserts, deletions in an audio as well. So we try to apply the best science available now that is peer-reviewed, is well documented, and we know the error rates, and we feel comfortable to not only apply them, but to be able to explain if it is necessary.
So that's what happens. So someone comes to you, say, with a video, and they're saying, this is not me. You go through these steps. Say, come this fall, someone presents you with a video, a candidate, and they're saying, I didn't say these things. I need some evidence that to support this. What's your process working with a client like that?
Yes. So I would also like to disclose that there are two major scenarios. One, when somebody claims that it's not his face and he approaches us or another university or forensic lab. This is the case number one. And case number two is when by default we follow, and not only us, many other universities and scientists, we follow different websites, and we are looking for this kind of videos. On some of the websites, it is expectable the videos to be manipulated. Also, when it is about news, breaking news, let's say, or different important websites that upload the videos, by default, we start to batch process them. And it's like phishing, but this is a scientific phishing. It's not just gambling. No, this is about applying the real science on real videos and try to move as fast as possible. And you see this kind of two different scenarios. The science is the same, just the way we collect the evidence is different. In one case, we wait for a client, a potential client, to contact us. In the second one, we look for the evidence and analyze them, as I said, by batch processing. And we speak about the science of the pixels and the mathematical relationship between the pixels. The pixels that we see in an original video follow a mathematical rule. They are not just random. Each pixel is in a mathematical relationship against the neighbor. And we start speaking about blocks of data in an image that are correlated mathematically. Whenever we edit locally an image by removing a person, by inserting a person or an object or a face, we change the original mathematical relationship between pixels. And this is why we say that it is very easy to cheat the human vision, meaning the eyes and the brain, but it's way harder to cheat the mathematics.
Sure. Yeah, that's right. And that's what you're relying on, are those relationships built in. And when there is some distortion or modification, it's going to leave some sort of artifact. And that's what you're looking for.
Exactly. And we apply different mathematical solutions, different algorithms. They are completely different. And in the end, we try to correlate the results to see if they are consistent. And if, like this, we can verify one method with another. Always use several methods.
So you have some validation that tools are coming up with the same outcome. So Cole, so So we were talking about the manufacturing of these. How complicated is it to make a deepfake video or audio? I mean, could someone off-the-shelf kind of product?
So there have been attempts to kind of make off-the-shelf stuff. I think there's been articles and stuff like that. Sometime last year that there was an app that was, you just upload a picture or video and they'll make it for you and do it for you, and they'll show you what you look like if you're 50 years older and stuff like that. All of that comes from this open source world of the deepfake lab stuff that's coming out. You can find GitHub repositories. It's not like it's hidden. It's not necessarily underground, but it is very much coming from an open source world. This is lots and lots of people contributing from all over the world and all sorts of different backgrounds contributing to these projects. To this, they're not necessarily open in the sense that like there's a person, they're putting their face out there and saying, this is, hey, my tool, and this is how I'm doing this. It's all sort of underground in that way, but that's kind of the open source community in general. There are other companies that are obviously, I mean, you can guarantee that places like, Google, Microsoft, Facebook, they're all working on their stuff. Huge corporations like Disney. Disney actually just released, I want to say it was sometime last week, that they're working on super high-res versions of the deepfakes kind of capabilities. So it's there, it's available. It's not necessarily, you don't have to have a computer science degree. It's not necessarily at that level where you're writing up your own code and stuff like that. And it's getting, as time has gone on, it's gotten easier and easier and easier for you to just grab something you download and then just start running something. But it does require resources. It requires time is probably the biggest thing. If the more money you can kind of throw at it in hardware, the quicker things can become. But just generally kind of, being the person in your parents' basement sort of a thing, it's still completely viable, as much as it is for academic researchers and stuff like that to do it as well. One of the kind of big things, though, that I wanted to add on to kind of what we were talking about earlier, deepfakes are just a tool. They're a thing, just like Photoshop. The invention of the digital image and the idea that we could edit something just digitally on our computers was like the end of, like, we could never believe our eyes anymore, and we've gotten accustomed to it and we've grown to that. It's just another tool. It's another evolution of that same thing. All it is doing is it's editing images. It's just editing images rapidly in a video, and it's doing it with AI as opposed to doing it singly by hand. And I think kind of tying that into the making of it, it's still very much in its earlier stages. Personally, I don't think that there's been a deepfake video created that a person looking at it doesn't immediately go, well, there's something wrong with that.
This is something off. Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah. There's nothing at the level where it's gonna be in a movie theater on a huge screen with hundreds of thousands of people watching it and completely believing that thing happened. And the reason why is because one of the kind of backbones of deepfakes is that it's automated. The amount of work that goes into making a CGI scene and making it look real, those scenes exist, but the amount of manpower that had to go into it, it was a lot. And it takes a ton of money, a ton of time, a ton of know-how, a ton of knowledge. The movement to deepfakes is to try and automate all that stuff. So in that way, I think the ultimate end goal is going to be that there will be something out there that someone can put on their computer. They can add a whole bunch of images to it, throw a couple of videos into it, hit a button, and an hour later something pops out. And that does exist. It's not at that level where anything that's done that way is going to be believable. The amount of time and the amount of processing that has to be done to make it believable. And I think a lot of times you see these videos, you don't also see the post-processing that goes into that too. A lot of times the biggest limitations with the deepfakes when you're making them is that they're limited to really small resolutions. So like looking at the screen, like what we're looking at right now, we're a tiny little head in a little window. Even though I'm looking on this, a 4K monitor, the amount of pixels that make up our face are relatively small. If you tried to take that and blow that up to a 4K screen and I'm just looking at you directly, or any actress, or, and they do close-ups in movies all the time, right? I mean, you get a big, huge face. To process that amount of data, those amount of pixels, is a much, much bigger ask than it is currently right now, where you're looking at videos on a cell phone, something small, something screen. So they're actually usually, for the longest time, I think the deepfake stuff was limited to 64 by 64 pixels, which is almost nothing. Megapixel cameras 20 years ago were taking pictures that had more detail in the face than that. So, and that's where the kind of Disney researchers releasing their high definition version of deepfakes, that's still only 1024 by 1024. That's less than a quarter of high definition. That's still really small. So I think those are the technical limitations are still there. And I think a lot of that is what's going to really keep it from becoming just this huge thing. And that's why I kind of put out there that it's a tool. It's a piece of of a thing that can be used for creative purposes, it can be used for just having fun, and it can be used for misinformation. My argument though is that the strongest tool, the easiest tool to use for misinformation is just memes, just pictures with words on them. That conveys and does more for misinformation than the most realistic, crazy deepfake, CGI, AI, everything video that you could possibly put out, just because it's the quickest and it's the easiest for anybody to do. Anybody can do that. There are a million apps that let you take a picture, put words on it, and post it to Facebook or whatever social media. So, and then that's just the video side of it. Add on to that also the audio side of it. Probably the biggest limitation for the deepfake videos is that you can get a person who roughly has the same body type, has the same hairstyle, and you can put someone's face on them. But do they also do a great impersonation of their voice? Can you make them say something that they literally didn't say? Right now, I'm puppeteering someone's face. My words are still coming out, and my voice is coming out. So the deep voice side of that, the audio side of that, is even more kind of crazy, especially to the human ear. Human ear is really great at picking up voices and picking up problems with voices. So even right now, the most advanced kind of AI voices still have that sounds kind of robotic. That cadence doesn't quite sound right. There's still, so the same idea. So until the video and the audio come together at that super high level, there's always going to be there's something wrong with that. I can kind of tell, that stuff is still there. But overall, deepfakes are easy to make, but to make a good, high quality deepfake, it takes way more work than I think most people are willing to put into something like that. I think the researchers, the companies, the people that are pushing it, they're obviously going to do that. And believe me, they're all working on that. But for just the average person at home or on their cell phone, it's just not there. And it won't be there for a while. It'll eventually be there, I'm sure, but it won't be there for a long while.
So trolling 101 is still the way to go.
Absolutely. Yeah. And
yeah.
I'm not going to make a meme that takes me 3 weeks to put together to burn somebody that burned me 3 weeks ago. I'm going to do it right now. Anything I can get done in 5 minutes, that's the most important thing. So yeah, it's still, again, it's a tool and it's there, but it took forever for Photoshop to be just run on people's laptops and stuff like that. It's a similar idea. Obviously, it's going to move faster. Technology is moving faster now, but I really think of it in a similar way. It's a tool just like Photoshop, Premiere, all those things where it's going to become ubiquitous. And it is out there. It's just, the idea that it's going to run on somebody's cell phone in a high quality way is still a long way off.
Sure. And when you think about the consumer of this misinformation, it's easier to take somebody's statement out of context and put in other things and have a montage of things out of context to convey a certain viewpoint than it is to, like you say, spend 3 weeks of intensive audio and media manipulation to get the same point across.
Right. Well, and a perfect example of that was last year. There was a video of Speaker Pelosi. Go look at this video. She's drunk. It took 2 seconds for anybody to watch that to realize all they did was slow that down. There's no deepfake. There's no way. There's nothing in there. Someone ripped a video, put it in Premiere, slowed it down by 20% or whatever, and put it back. And now all of a sudden she sounds drunk. That's all that took. There was nothing, And again, that's the easy thing. And until deepfakes hit that point where I can create a convincing deepfake in 5 minutes, there's no way it's going to be that ubiquitous. So.
Sure. But we also know that most offenders are early adopters, right? They're the ones that are getting in on the technology and saying, hey, look at this. Here's an outlet. So that's always a challenge as technology evolves. Eventually, you're going to be facing some of these really interesting problems. So, Dr. Grigoras, what other types of problems do you address in the field of media forensics? We talked about deep fakes, but some of these other things that you have experience with.
Media forensics is the science that deals with audio, image, and video enhancement, authentication. We also deal with evidence retrieval or collection. We have to respect best practice guidelines to collect evidence, like the police has best practice guidelines to collect the DNA and fingerprints from the crime scene. The logic is exactly the same in our field. So don't touch the evidence, don't leave any traces, protect the evidence like the evidence, digital evidence in our case would be DNA, avoid any kind of contamination. While in other sciences they speak about biological contamination, we speak about digital contamination. So avoid any digital contamination. And try, if we speak about audio enhancement, in most of the cases is about enhancing the voice in a noisy recording that contains, for instance, background music, background noises, background voices. So try to extract one voice. Or if it is about authentication, given a file, try to find out if that audio file is consistent or inconsistent with an original. If the file contains any traces of deletions, inserts, any kind of digital processing, and you just mentioned a few seconds ago about audio edits and the manipulations and the video as well. So why to work 3 weeks when in few seconds you can change the meaning of an entire discussion by deleting a yes or a no, or copy pasting a no over a yes. So these are things that, like Cole already said, you need 2 seconds to do it. And you change the meaning of the discussion, and you compromise a politician or a person. And speaking about the challenges now, is also about time. How fast can our algorithms detect a local manipulation? Cole mentioned 2 seconds to manipulate a video, and to do it quite simple by just playing with the speed. Is exactly the same on the other side of the wall in the forensic lab. You have to come with the results as soon as possible, not in 1 week, ideally in 2 seconds as well, or even in real time. So from the moment a deep fake is released on the market till the moment it is proved to be a deep fake, it can be 2 seconds, 2 hours, 2 days. This time frame can be crucial because of what's happening in these critical hours. The news are released by one channel, let's say, and are repeated, amplified by the entire world. So the damage can be huge. And this is why it is necessary the methods to be not only very good, but to also be as fast as possible. So in the end, to come with a final conclusion as strong as possible from a scientific point of view, and as fast as possible as well.
And I'm sure, based on your expertise and seeing thousands of these, you can probably look at a video and know right away, well, okay, we're going to go and because you know where the distortions are happening just based on your own probably experience, and then you can go through the scientific process to confirm those things. But it raises a kind of an issue when someone brings something to you. How much should you know about the case to inform your investigation, your examination, without coming to the point of introducing potential bias, right? Looking to find something. So if I give you a serologist, a packet of blood, or a toxicologist some blood to examine, they're going to run it through the system. Yes, this is cocaine, fentanyl, whatever, right? And it's a blind system. So for you need a little bit more information, I think, or maybe not. I don't know. How do you feel about that line in terms of working with law enforcement or prosecutors and saying, or whoever?
I will give you exactly the description of a real case, a typical one. Everything starts with a link, an internet link that anybody can just access and watch a video. And there is no information about the source, like the camera, the microphone, the person that created that video. So this is the evidence that we deal with in this kind of cases. Nobody assumes the originality of these kind of videos. They just appear somewhere on internet, and we have to work like in blind. No information, no reference, just given one file, try to squeeze that file by squeezing the science to find out any possible traces of manipulation. So from this point of view, ideally would be, yes, to have the camera, to have information from the person that created the video. And there are cases now when original videos uploaded on internet are considered by some people like inconsistent with originals or edited. And it was just proof that the people that created that image or video just showed up with the camera, with the original file, and they assumed that the file that was uploaded on internet was consistent with an original. So we have the opposite scenarios. This is just real life. So from the moment we are given with a link, we try to find out if there are any other versions of the same video on other websites. So many social media websites that can host this kind of videos. And one of the tests that we have to do is to verify if the video that is reported and present on one of these social media websites is available on another one with a better quality. We can also verify the date or the dates when these videos were uploaded, and like this to start to understand the chronology. One video can be just illegally or without respecting the copyrights, copy pasted and edited on another website. So the second video is not even the same quality and doesn't have the same length like the original. So this is why we have to dig, and some people call it forensic media archaeology. So this is a very good comparison between what we have to do sometimes, this kind of investigation. Meantime, the very first video that was detected goes on a computer, and the computer starts to analyze the video. And in the meantime, we look for a better quality video. We look for the source. We look for a version as close as possible to the original. We also look for information about the time when it was uploaded. We look for any kind of other information from the same user that uploaded. Sometimes if you follow, for instance, a user, you start to understand his modus operandi. You start to understand the way he edits. You start to detect that most of his videos are edited. Then it is logic to just put like a kind of tag on him and just expect the new videos that are coming have not only traces of manipulation, but the traces of manipulation to be consistent with the traces of manipulation from previous videos. Real life examples we have. And we also can start speaking like, I will go with a comparison now. 100 years ago, when the criminals started to find out that their fingerprints from the crime scene can be used against them, they started to wear gloves. The same we started to notice now, that we can speak about smart edits made by people that started to understand a little bit of the media forensics techniques that can be used and are used when analyzing a video, and they start to apply anti-forensic methods like to delete traces.
All right. So they're recognizing what artifacts you're recognizing and picking up on, and they're cleaning up their mess a little bit as they go along.
They can try, and they started to delete some of them, but mathematically speaking, it's impossible to remove all of them. And much more than this, when removing one of them, in fact, they introduce more traces. And in the end, our conclusion can be even much more stronger. Like the video is consistent with an original, and much more contains traces of anti-forensic tools.
That's right. So knowingly, there's the intention of recognizing that they're doing something wrong and trying to cover it up. So that is evidence of manipulation. So let's turn to your organization, the National Center for Media Forensics. It's a leading organization conducting research and examinations in this field. Tell us about your program, the goals and purpose of the center.
I guess that the best speaker about this is my colleague, Cole, because he's a 100% product of University of Colorado, Denver, and our program.
So I come from an audio background. I've been in studios, production, music production, played guitar, been in bands, stuff like that, and have a lot of musician friends and stuff, and that's kind of audio is my real background. I basically got into this because it was the only master's program that I knew of at the time, and turns out it's because it's the only master's program that exists like this for multimedia forensics. So I kind of just sort of got tired of being in the studio all the time, not really getting anywhere. So like I was gonna own my own studio. The world of digital music has kind of changed all that anyway. There are fewer and fewer studios to be a part of anymore. So I kind of went back to school, got my bachelor's degree from UCD, and then immediately went into this master's program as well. So I kind of have a unique perspective on that because I kind of came from this program, went through this program, and then now working in the field. So it's pretty awesome. But I would say that the center, we kind of have 3 or 4 sort of specific areas that we kind of look at. We have the master's program, we have the research that we do in the field, both kind of personally and also as a part of the research community. We have training courses that we offer for law enforcement and for people that are working in the field. And then we kind of have the sort of community work that we do, mostly with Catalin. They're doing work for like local law enforcement and stuff like that. So I would say that the master's and the research, the master's program and the research is kind of the 2 big driving things.
So your students, where do they come from? One of the things about digital evidence, you go back, because it is such a relatively new field compared to some of these other forensic disciplines. People kind of hobbled, they came from many different fields. And is that what you see with your student population? They're coming from engineering, computer science, other types of programs?
For us particularly, I think because we're also a part of the College of Arts and Media at the university, I would say about half of our cohort every year comes from the creative field. A lot of them come with an audio background. Some of them have a photography background, video background, stuff like that. So a sort of creative but technical background is kind of a common thread. But then we also have lots of people that are computer science majors, criminalistic majors, criminology and stuff like that. People from the CJC kind of world of stuff. We have people that are working professionals already. Again, like I said, we're the only master's program that specifically deals with media forensics. So we have a lot of people that are, friends of the center in the community at forensic science conferences that we go to, AES, all that kind of stuff, that will then actually join the program and become a part of it as well. I would say just about every cohort has at least one person that's been a working professional that is out in the field doing stuff that is kind of furthering their education with that stuff. And then that also kind of goes with the training courses that we offer for law enforcement or for people in the field. That also often leads to them kind of furthering that and going through the master's program as well. The kind of training courses are to kind of whet your appetite, get you hooked on it, and then you kind of come for the master's program for the full course meal. Yeah, they kind of come from everywhere. I mean, really, and I think the most commonly, the ones that do the most successfully have some sort of technical background, just in a digital sense. They understand computers, they understand at least a little bit of signal processing and that type of stuff, which is important for the digital side of stuff. But I mean, they really come from everywhere. Our program is a hybrid program. It's a mostly online program, so most of the courses are done online. And then we have, not now thanks to the kind of human malware that's out there now, but we have on-site times basically every semester. Just about there's a week where you're here on campus doing stuff hands-on with lectures and with our computers and stuff like that. But because of that let us open everything up to essentially the world. So we have people from all over the states, just about every state in the U.S., as well as we've had people from the UK, from kind of Middle East, I mean, everywhere, Africa.
Excellent. Oh, so then when you think about where they end up, at least the domestic students, you're looking at the government organizations, FBI, other types, but also the private sector.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of private companies. Target and Walmart have huge forensic labs. That world of stuff is kind of a common area for people to get into. There's the federal labs. There's obviously local and state and city law enforcement and stuff that it goes into. But then the other side of the private stuff is like working as consultants for other companies, or also just working for themselves, starting their own businesses. That's a big one. And then kind of going in and working with other tech companies too. I know we have an alum that's working with Uber on their kind of AI driving side of stuff. There are private companies that do work. They present and create demonstratives to use in court cases. And so we have people that are a part of that world as well that take the tools and the stuff that they learn here and apply that directly to how to create and kind of make the most advanced and most detailed and most scientific background on their demonstratives and stuff like that for cases as well. I mean, yeah, it's kind of all over. It's a relatively open field. Like you said, it's a younger field. So the other kind of big part of this is the academic side of that stuff too. It's, I think the the world sort of just kind of accepted a lot of the stuff that kind of came out of DNA testing and fingerprint testing and the kind of more traditional forensic sciences. And when the digital stuff started kind of coming in, and especially the digital media forensic science stuff, it kind of turned a lot of that stuff over. And it kind of started creating a need for much more rigorous scientific focus on stuff. There have been a lot of reports that have come out of the last couple of years that have kind of emphasized that. And I think because we're a relatively younger discipline within the forensic sciences, we were ripe for, we jump on this and we're now going to be the strongest as far as science goes. We may not have 40 years of people in the field doing this stuff, but we're starting off right off the bat with the strongest foundation in the scientific world. So there's a whole other academic side of it too, where the research, the science, the publications, all that kind of stuff needs to come in. And so that's a whole other world. And that's actually the world that I was most intrigued in. And that's why I'm, super happy to be here with the university doing this stuff, is, being on the kind of sort of ground level of getting that research done, getting that work out and kind of furthering the field as a whole is super important. And I'm proud of it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The combination of education, standard procedures, and the pursuit of research as a collective. Let's wrap this up with your thoughts on what's next. What are some key developments and challenges and moving forward in the field of media forensics?
Yes, it's a very dynamic field, and if we go deep into it, we can start to split it into forensic audio, forensic image, forensic video, and also deep voices, deep faces. So it is expectable the deep fakes and deep voices to be better and better. It's just normal. The computers to be way faster. So what a computer can do it now in 1 week, to be able to do it in 1 hour is just normal. The capacity to store information to be way bigger and cheaper. We see this is the tendency for the past 50 years, in fact, in this field. We expect also the forensic media to advance, because we always follow the latest developments in this kind of field. So we have to be aware of the latest technologies to counterfeit audios, images, and videos. So for sure, this is a very dynamic field, and the techniques used by the forensic labs to be the same, better and faster, ideally to work almost real time. We know from a mathematical point of view that real time doesn't in fact exist. It's about, let's say, milliseconds, seconds from the input till the output of a result. And it makes sense. It's just normal to be like this. We expect from this technological point of view huge advances. We can speak about new algorithms to compress data and to be better than what we have nowadays. We are aware of the latest mobile phone standards that are already finished on the paper. But from an industrial point of view now, we have to wait like 5 to 10 years. So let's say that the mobile phones that will be available on the market in 10 years by now, we already know the technology that they will use, but we don't have the technology to build them yet. So we already have a clue of the direction we will have to go with the research. So the hot milestones that we see in the predictable future, like in 5 to 10 years by now. Looking to the past, we also have unsolved problems, and we speak about technology developed 5 to 10 years ago, and we are still digging to find out methods to analyze audios and videos and images produced with this kind of technology, and it's still a huge ocean or pool of information that we know that it is there in the files, and we try to improve the methods that we already have to expect much more information. So for sure, for people that want to join this field, this is a huge one. And if we compare it with handwriting, then or fingerprints, then yes, our field is very young. but I guarantee that there are a lot of wonderful challenges, and nobody that joins this kind of field has time to get bored. No, it's not.
I can't see how you can get bored.
Speaking of other fields and stuff like that, I don't know how much you can add to teaching and pedagogy at this point, right? Like it's really difficult. You have to be really specialized to do that, but you can always add something to a younger field. There's lots of room to grow and lots of places to go. So it's another advantage of it being a young field too, is there's a lot of work there, a lot of good stuff. So the biggest, I think, hurdle that we're finding as we go forward with I would imagine it's in every kind of forensic field though, and as digital media becomes easier and easier to store, more and more of it, there's more and more stuff to sift through. Cases and work that maybe even just 10 years ago might have been maybe 50% digital is now moving closer and closer to being 100% digital. There's lots of people that we work with, DAs and stuff like that say that they don't have a single case that doesn't have some either cell phone footage or cell phone data, anything like that, any sort of computer data. Everything has digital stuff in it. So it's becoming more and more common, and it's becoming harder and harder to parse through all that stuff. We're kind of at the cusp of the beginning of, there's sort of the traditional stuff. Really, a lot of the stuff that Catalin's talked about, the ways that we're detecting things, is more traditional. It requires somebody to kind of sit down and do some stuff to it. And then we're kind of moving towards a sort of AI versus AI world of kind of work. The more stuff that's being generated and the more stuff that's automatically being generated, the more we have to do on the forensic side of automatically, fighting or detecting or categorizing at the very least, being able to focus in on, we have 10 terabytes of data to go through, but we only need to look at this 1 gigabyte. This is the stuff that's important, that type of stuff. I think that's going to be the biggest challenge, and that's the biggest hurdle, I think, regardless of how strong and how good the tools are and how many things are out there. That's, I think, going to be the biggest hurdle that this whole field, all of the forensic sciences are facing right now.
This is a fantastic conversation. I'd like to thank our guests today, Catalin Grigoras and Cole Whitecotton. Thank you for spending time with Just Science to discuss deepfakes and video authentication and your program at the National Center. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to like and follow Just Science on your podcast platform of choice. For more information on today's topic and resources in the forensic field, visit forensiccoe.org. I'm Mike Planny, and this has been another episode of Just Science.
In the next episode, Just Science interviews Dr. Catherine Siegfried Speller about the relationship between vicarious trauma and digital evidence. Opinions or points of views expressed in this podcast represent a consensus of the authors and do not necessarily represent the official position or policies of its funding.